Earlier this year, Bethesda announced their plans to add new ways to travel in Starfield, in response to some of the criticism that players had about planetary exploration. Just this past week during Gamescom, they revealed the addition of land vehicles to the spacefaring adventure, in the form of the brand new Rev 8 Land Rover. This August update includes the vehicle itself and several other fixes, including new performance options for the Xbox Series S. Today, we're taking a look at this brand new ground vehicle, how to obtain it and use it, and we'll even be taking a look at a handful of mods that have already released for this brand new framework, all of which have been made in only a few days' time. You really gotta hand it to the modding community. The new Rev 8 Rover doesn't add any new quests, or even new ship habs in order to obtain it. Rather, once the update is installed, simply head to any ship technician, and select the new dialogue option about purchasing a vehicle. Right now, the Rev 8 is the only option available, and it can be purchased for 25,000 credits. Once it's been bought, it'll spawn alongside your ship at any and every landing site. And yes, that includes in the cities. You won't need any special ship hab, and once purchased, the Rev 8 will always spawn alongside your ship's boarding ramp. If you return to the ship technician, you'll have a dialogue option to view your vehicles, which, to me, hopefully means there's plans to add more in the future, or maybe some sort of upgrade system to get better armor, weapons, and so on. But even now, having this framework in place has made it easier for mod authors to add their own vehicles as well. And while you won't be able to change any of the Rev 8's components, you can at least change its colors. Taking the Rover through the city streets will have NPCs jumping out of the way, running and screaming if you get too close. And you might wind up in trouble with the law and rack up a hell of a bounty in the process. Honestly, I would say there's no reason to drive through the cities unless you're really just looking to run people down. But let's instead take it out into the wilds, where we're more so intended to use it. The Rev 8 comes with a boost, vertical thrusters for jumping, and a mining laser, which serves as your only weapon. It can be used for actually mining materials, and you can still use your scanner to mark off animals, plants, and mark nearby locations. As a weapon, the mining laser isn't great. It's fine against some lower level enemies, but it's not really a viable option for much else. The top speed, without boosting that is, does feel kinda slow, but I realized very quickly why they did this. There's a lot more noticeable texture and model pop-in because we're ultimately going faster across the world spaces than was originally planned for. I found that I did have to change my graphic settings a bit to get a more consistent frame rate, and I found that Starfield as a whole felt a bit more sluggish after this update. Honestly, recording this video, I probably had the most crashes that I've ever seen in the game. You are going to hit the tile barrier a lot faster just as a result of this faster traversal, but even then, this was because I just kept driving in one direction just to see how far I could go. The Rev 8 definitely makes it easier to close the gap between points of interest, and much like Skyrim's horses, the Rover will climb just about every mountain. Handling and control-wise, it reminds me a bit of Halo's Warthog, although you won't need to get out in order to flip it back over. Using the jump feature will get your right side up again. I did find it a little easy to get stuck on the terrain, and the driving could feel a bit bumpy depending on the biome. Some of the game's companions have new dialogue for the update, which I thought was a really nice touch. Human followers will ride shotgun, or if you have Vasco as your companion, he'll ride in the back bay. I definitely seem to get the most consistent comments from Vasco in particular, with him even having new animations for when you get significant airtime. So really, Vasco is just the best passenger to have.
Preliminary diagnostics indicate a successful jump, Captain. Unlike humans, I do not experience thrills from increased velocity. The faster we go, the faster we will reach our destination. We should have you inspected for a concussion when we return to the ship.
From what I can tell, the Rev 8 doesn't have its own health or damage system, and instead, you simply worry about if your character is taking damage while driving around. And I managed to hurt the Adoring fan a couple times when he was riding shotgun. All in all, I think this is a good foundational update, and if anything, I think a lot of Starfield's updates this past year have been really great at adding more quality of life additions to the game that will help to make another playthrough a bit more fun. The proper world maps, the bounty hunter framework, and now, the ground vehicles. I wouldn't say that any one of these on their own are a reason to come back to the game, but they'll be really good additions if you want to do another playthrough, or if you're coming back for the Shattered Space expansion this fall. Obviously, the addition of ground vehicles on their own doesn't solve the problems people had with the lack of variety in points of interest, but I will say I personally found a couple new points of interest that I hadn't seen before just when recording for this video. There are a handful of ways in which I would maybe want to see this new vehicle framework be improved upon, just to maybe make it feel a bit more integrated into the game. I wish there was maybe some sort of option to spawn in the Rover in case you don't want to see it at the landing pads in the cities. Maybe add some sort of button in the cockpits to deploy the Rev 8 when you touch down on a planet, and then it'll be waiting for you outside. I wish we had the Rev 8 physically in our landing bays and could drive it down the ramp ourselves, but it's a really tight squeeze if you try to force it into some of the bays. So I get why they didn't do that, and instead opted to have it spawn outside. Personally, I would love it if the Rev 8 was maybe tied to a brand new, larger, garage-style landing bay, and that it would only be available if using said hypothetical bay. But I realize that this would limit the access to the Rev 8, as a lot of people already have their ideal ship built, and changing out a bay for a bigger one might really throw that off. But to me, it's just something that would make the Rover feel a bit more of a natural addition. I would love to see some additions to the Rev 8, including better weapons and maybe even a secondary weapon like a missile launcher in addition to the mining laser. Maybe have a way to improve the thruster capacity for longer boost or higher jumps. And I don't think we'll get it, but I kinda wish there was more of an introduction to the Rev 8 in-game. Maybe if it was introduced as a Constellation exploration vehicle, and was given to you after making some progress in the main story. Honestly, I think it would've worked perfectly if it was given to you when Vlad has you investigate the very first temple. But like I said at the start of the video, mod authors have already gotten to work with this brand new framework, and there's a few in particular that I wanted to show off today. If anything, this is really just the beginning, and I'm sure we're gonna see a lot more vehicle mods in the coming weeks and months. I was actually really worried at one point that I wouldn't be able to show off mods for this video, as I kept on getting some really weird physics bugs with the modded cars. For each of the 4 mods that I'm showing off today, I ran into problems as soon as I entered them, with them starting to float off and being nearly impossible to drive. At first, I thought this was due to just one of the mods in particular, so I uninstalled it and loaded an earlier save. But the wonky physics still persisted on the others, and it even affected the regular Rev 8. But after some trial and error and some really weird driving physics, I found that entering and exiting your ship would reset the physics and make them work normally again. Quitting out and relaunching the game also seemed to fix it. Since I mentioned that the handling reminded me of Halo's Warthog, how about we start off with that? The M12B FAV, better known as the Warthog, is available as a standalone vehicle, meaning that when you install the mod, it'll show up as a separate vehicle option in the Ship Technicians menu, letting you switch between the standard Rev 8 and this. Just a heads up though, the handling, sound effects, and animations are the same across the board for all of the modded vehicles that we're looking at today. So while it doesn't feel any different from the Rev 8, it's still a fun addition. And it's not even the first Halo mod that we've seen for Starfield. Now, the mod author for the Warthog has already made 3 other vehicle mods, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they already have another one out by the time this video releases. But I specifically wanted to show off their old Earth ATV, which for legal reasons is definitely not a Jeep. The mod author does plan to add new animations and update the first-person camera view for all of their mods. But given that the new vehicle system has just launched, I think these are already really well done. The lack of new animations is much less noticeable on the Warthog, although you can tell that Vasco is supposed to be holding onto the railing that would normally be on the Rev 8. For the Jeep, however, the lack of animations is a little bit more noticeable, especially for entering and exiting the vehicle as the doors don't open. Neither of these modded cars can really have their colors changed either. You can change the color of the wheels, but not for the main body themselves. Next up is the X-34 Landspeeder, which you might recognize as Luke's Landspeeder from Star Wars Episode 4. This is available either as a standalone version or a replacer for the Rev 8. I went for the standalone version myself. Given that this was the only hovering vehicle in the lineup, I was curious to see how it would stack up. If anything, it almost feels a little bit more natural, because the Rev 8 is already a little floaty at times. Since it doesn't have any new animations or sound effects, you will hear the vanilla wheel sounds, and I'd be curious if they might be able to change that in the future. One problem that I ran into was that the blaster added to the X-34 will replace the model and texture for the standard mining laser for any of the vehicles that you have. And finally, we have the NASA Lunar Rover by Bub. This mod released the same day as the vehicle update, which is a crazy turnaround. Based on the original design used in the Apollo 15 missions, this is a really great callback to Starfield's NASA punk roots. Currently, the mod is only available as a replacer for the Rev 8, unlike the Warthog, Jeep, and Landspeeder that are available as additional vehicles. I immediately took this one to the moon, where I got to take advantage of the low gravity, making jumps that lasted a lot longer. This one might be my personal favorite of the mods so far, since it really looks like something that fits into Starfield. I'm not sure what the author's long-term plans are, but it would be really cool if there was a quest to obtain it. Maybe have it so you locate it on the moon at a mini museum or ruin. But that's gonna be all for today. I'm definitely gonna keep an eye out for more Starfield vehicle mods, but I'm also excited to cover more Starfield mods in general. I feel like the modding scene is gonna start picking up a bit more, now that authors have had some more time to get used to the new creation kit. And of course, I think the release of the Shattered Space expansion will help bring some players back to the game. As always, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the Patreon or the YouTube memberships, both of which get access to the Discord server. YouTube members also get access to the channel emotes, which can be used in the comments below. And make sure to check out the streams at twitch.tv/0periodproductions. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.